السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. And in today's YouTube video on the Islamic Knowledge YouTube channel, we're looking at an absolutely phenomenal book titled Malik and Medina, Islamic Legal Reasoning in the Formative Period by Sheikh Umar Faruq Abdullah. And this has been printed by Brill. And by the way, my copy is not the original copy. I must add, I've got to just give a disclaimer here. I hope I'm not infringing copyright, and maybe I am, but this book is so expensive on Amazon. It's over £100. So I have got it printed with DocZoo, which does mean that because the book actually goes over 500 sides, I've not managed to fit in the contents page. It does more or less finish around page 501. I think 501 is the final page of reading, but there is a contents page after this which did not fit in. Now, in terms of solid reading, you are looking at about 269 pages of solid reading, and then after that he starts the terminological discussion on Imam Malik's Muwatta and Mudawwana. Now this book is absolutely phenomenal. I benefited from it tremendously in my Hanafi book that I'm writing, and I've just finished, An Introduction to the Hanafi Madhab Volume 1. I'm going to go through this entire book, An Introduction to the Hanafi Madhab Volume 1, from February 15th, and it's going to be once a week, every single Sunday for 1 year. I'm going to go through the entire book. You will get a non-downloadable PDF access to that for lifetime, and you can access that course by looking in the description to this video, and you should find it there. And also for this book, I've got tremendous amount of notes, and it's honestly a book which you could keep making notes on every single page. It's that good, and I actually hope to share all of my notes on our Telegram channel as well. Now I want to go through what this book is all about. So if we look on the contents page, again, I've kind of written my notes in between the contents page because of how many notes I've had to write. But you've got an absolutely immense discussion here. Firstly, Malik and the Medina. First, introduction. So he discusses all about Ahlul Hadith, Ahlul Ra'i, comparing Malik and Abu Hanifa, dissent in early Islamic law, the relative paucity of legal hadith. Then Malik in Medina, he has an overview of the whole life of Imam Malik, rahimahullah, in these pages here. Then an overview of Malik's legal reasoning here. Then you've got critiques of Medini's practice. Practice is amal, tawaruth, basically ta'amul, amalu ahl al-Medina. Then you've got the Medini's practice in the eyes of the advocates, and then part 2 starts about how Imam Malik rahimahullah uses these terminologies in his Muwatta and Mudawwana. And I want to show you something in this book that in terms of fawaid, it's absolutely filled to the brim with fawaid. One of the unique features I love about this book is that he actually benefits from traditional writers on this field as well. So he benefits from the traditional writers in Islamic law. For example, Sheikh Abu Zahra, Sheikh Mustafa Zarqa, he benefits from them quite a bit. So for example, if we just go to page 168, you'll see just on that page, he's essentially quoting Sheikh Abu Zahra and Sheikh Mustafa Zarqa on literally the same page. And it's really nice to see that in academia these books are also getting some attention. So you can see Abu Zahra Malik, he benefits from Abu Zahra a lot, by the way, in this whole book. Sheikh Mustafa Zarqa's Al-Madkhal al-Fiqhi al-Am, I think, is also benefited from there as well. And just to go through some of the interesting fawaid inside the book. So on page 11, you've got a discussion where Sheikh Umar Faruq, he explains how the differences between the Ahlul Hadith and Ahlul Ra'i are not black and white. This doesn't mean that basically we can label everyone as either Ahlul Hadith or everyone as Ahlul Ra'i. Rather, it's a spectrum. So he says it must be emphasized that the dichotomy between the proponents of considered opinion and the proponents of tradition remains a pivotal polarity distinguishing jurists from each other in the early period of Islamic law. But it was essentially an interpretive propensity and frame of mind which manifested itself at the level of individual jurists in all centers and was never strictly regional. Proper understanding of this phenomenon facilitates the construction of new and broader cognitive frames that allow us to make a more accurate reading of the complex and often seemingly contradictory primary materials of the formative period. He carries on, and then he says, linking the outlooks of individuals to the groups they nominally belong to must rest on sound empirical evidence and cannot be presumed on the basis of broad generalization or shared nomenclatures. Such caution must be applied to the constructs proponent of considered opinion and proponents of tradition when they are applied accurately and correctly to individuals, jurists in the formative period. It is a fallacy, and this is the important point, to presume that all of those identified with a particular group shared a single monolithic outlook. This is is so, mashallah, refined. It's fantastic. Page 33, one of the best biographies you will find of Imam Malik rahimahullah from this page onwards. Copious footnotes, by the way, from Sheikh Umar. Absolutely fantastic, really beneficial biography. On page 39, he tries to determine when exactly did Imam Muhammad study under Imam Malik. When exactly did he study the Muwatta? So he seems to be inclined towards the opinion that he was around about 20 years old. Like we know Sheikh Abu Zahra and other scholars have said about 26, 27. But in any case, lovely discussion here on this page as well. Studied under prominent Medini scholars such as Malik's teacher, Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani, who was among the most influential of Abu Yusuf's students. Studied in Medina under Malik and transmitted from him an important essential of the Muwatta, which al-Shaybani probably received around the age of 20. On page 95, he explains how Hanafis and Malikis considered Qawaid Kulliyah in the assessment of a hadith. So it's a lovely discussion on page 95 when he gets into the importance of Qawaid Kulliyah. He says, hadith constitute transmitted textual narratives which generally, but not always, go back to prophetic authority. They have diverse classifications and gradations. Their legal status among the early and later jurists varied widely according to the rankings they were given. In the Maliki and Hanafi traditions, how the legal content of technically authentic hadith related to the overall precepts and principles of the law was crucial in determining their authority as material sources of law. So this is really interesting. It relates a lot to what Sheikh Najil Amin and others have written as well. Then on page 187 to page 190, you've got one of the best discussions I've come across that has critiqued the Orientalist paradigms towards the development of Sharia law and towards the development of hadith. So literally, I'm going to put this on the Telegram channel. This entire footnote, I'm going to make a PDF out of it, a separate PDF, and I want everyone to read this because it's so beneficial here from here onwards. Basically, footnote number 11 on page 187. This entire footnote starts off with Golzaya, then he gets into Shaht. He speaks about Fazlur Rahman, and then at the end, interestingly, he even speaks about Wa'il Halaq. So he's of the view that Halaq's opinion is almost similar to Shaht, which I am reading about this just now, and essentially after having read Halaq's books, well, not all of them, but his books related to the origins of Islamic law, I initially did get that impression as well. And by the way, so did other scholars. For example, we've got a very famous article that was written by David S. Powers when he critiques Halaq and tries to make it look like Halaq is essentially saying the same thing as Shaht. And that is basically what Sheikh Umar Faruq Abdullah is saying. And to be honest with you, from my readings of Wa'il Halaq, I did get that impression a little bit. I can't lie. Wa'il Halaq modifies the Shahtian paradigm of Islamic legal origins by extending the length of the pre-classical formative period beyond the 3rd century. He adopts standard Shahtian back projection theory, however, and does not replace the Shahtian paradigm of praxis and its relation to back projection with anything radically new. And I can't help but slightly disagree with this. On page 23 as well, by the way, he makes a similar comment about Halaq, and he kind of does get some evidence to show what he's trying to say as well. And I've seen the same evidence in the origins, and I got to agree with what Sheikh Umar Faruq is saying here. I can't lie, but I'm going to show you something just now. So here as well, he says, he quotes Halaq as well, and he says, the process of back projecting legal doctrines backward led to the rising of legal hadith in the formative period, which in Halaq's view created the cultural and scholarly imperative that theoretically led to the accommodation of Shafi'i's legal theory. So you can see he does essentially feel that Halaq is like Shaht in many ways. But as I said, that's what David S. Powers also argued in this article here, Wa'il bi Halaq on the origins of Islamic law. And then Halaq wrote a full response, and this was in 2011, by the way, when in this one, which is a fantastic and phenomenal article. I'd recommend everyone to read this, wherein he actually shows all the differences between his approach and Shah's approach. But when it comes to back projection, I can't lie, I don't see a massive difference between him and Shah, which is why Sheikh Umar Faruq Abdullah is making sense to me, and Halaq is also making sense to me. Both are making sense to me. By the way, this dialogue between David S. Powers in this article and Halaq in this article has actually interestingly been translated into Arabic by Markaz Nama, and it's actually been titled Dirasatun fil Fiqh al-Islami Wa'il Halaq wa Mujadiluh. So this is an interesting book. It's actually been translated into Arabic, all of them. So this is very, very interesting. But in any case, to the extent where Sheikh Umar Faruq Abdullah on page 185 even critiques Melchett. Melchett is obviously his he's a phenomenal writer on this field, but he says Christopher Melchett also espouses the general Shaktian paradigm. He predicates his conception of the formation and development of the early regional schools on that basis. Although he greatly modifies the Shaktian vision of how and when the classical schools emerged, Melchett is primarily concerned with the dynamic interplay of formative Islamic jurisprudence between considered opinion, ra'i, and overt adherence to hadiths. Melchett does not focus on praxis, however, or undertake a historiographical review of its treatment in Islamic legal studies. Now, there are more interesting views as well. For example, on page 99, Sheikh Umar Faruq Abdullah actually critiques Shakht in probably one of the unique ways, when he says that Shakht's whole idea depends upon the idea that Shafi'i's ideas were fully accepted by everyone. And Sheikh Umar Faruq Abdullah is saying that's not a given. That's not a given. So he says here that these essentially Shakhtian hypotheses are predicated on the presumption that Shafi'i's insistence upon connected hadiths ultimately won the day and became universally accepted as classical Islamic jurisprudence. As noted earlier, the transition from disconnected to connected hadiths never happened across the board. I'm not sure I entirely agree with that. Disconnected hadiths remained authoritative in the Hanafi and Maliki schools. In the Hanbali school, they were secondary to technically authentic connected hadiths. In contrast to Shafi'is, however, the Hanbalis continued to give disconnected hadiths formal acceptance as a valid independent source of law. But I think that, I don't know, I can't disagree with Sheikh Umar Faruq Abdullah. He's such a scholar and such a talented scholar, but I do feel there is something about the Shafi'i paradigm, especially towards marasil, etc., which you can't deny has been very influential in determining how the Muslim Ummah in general looks at dalail of all the madhahib, essentially, not just the Shafi'i madhab. On another point, for example, on page 152, you've got a beautiful comment about how all the madhahib work together. So he says here, in reality, there was no stark difference between a Shafi'i and the other Imams regarding Islam as a religion of laws. All of them looked upon Islam as an all-embracing fabric of meaningful rules and purposeful legislation. Each would have agreed that its ultimate truth and perfection emerge in its fundamentally legislative design. But they disagreed on the weaver and loom, the thread and the weave. Abu Hanifa and Shafi'i plied their sources in vertical hierarchies. Malik and Ibn Hanbal interwove them in horizontal synergies. The four masters differed on the number and nature of spools they used of textual and non-textual threads, and they utilized the shuttle of reason in different ways. Malik and Abu Hanifa construed legal reasoning in a manner that contemplated revelation's ultimate purpose and design as implicitly entailed in its sources. Shafi'i and Ibn Hanbal adhered closely to the established pattern of revelation itself as explicitly indicated in texts. That's a beautiful, beautiful comment. So usually this book would be something that could be a bit challenging for some, but I really do think if you are in the final year of your Islamic studies or second to last year, you should definitely be reading this book. I think it's an absolutely phenomenal read. I hope you do access my notes. I do apologize, my daughter has scribbled in certain places of the notes, and hence why you've got this random felt tip mark. But I will share these notes on the Islamic Knowledge Telegram channel. So head on to the Telegram channel. Go on to Telegram and type in @IK Courses, center of the screen if you want to see, and you will see the Telegram channel there, and you will see all the notes as well, and you can see some of the important points that are in the book. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do share with others, please do spread the khair, and I hope you do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Until the next video, Jazakumullah khairan, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.